I'm Elyse Welles, and welcome to Seeking Noumena. With Seeking Noumena, I take you to spiritual places, or noumena, around the world, and today we are at the Monastery of St Margaret, built in the 1200s, here in Budapest, Hungary. Being a woman in the 13th century was far from easy. You only had a couple of options. You could either die a spinster, a burden to your family, or if you were lucky, you could get married and have children, likely dying in childbirth. Usually marrying a man that you don't know well, and he might treat you pretty terribly, and you'd have no power to stop that. But there was a respite, a third option for women throughout the Middle Ages, and that was to join a convent. Monasteries and convents were places of sisterhood. They were places where women could get to know each other in the safety and comfort of knowing only women and safety abounded around you. It was a place where you could learn intellectual pursuits, play music, write hymns. You could learn to read and write as a woman in a convent. Courtyards like this are where women for centuries could gather and respectfully entreat the elements around them here in the beautiful nature of Margaret Island, safe from invading forces, safe from men, safe from anything that might seek to harm them. And in a time of constant invasion by Mongols and later Ottomans, Margaret Island was a refuge for women. And you can feel that energy here. Even today, despite it no longer being a convent, Margaret Island is a place of relaxation, a place that people come to escape the bustle of Budapest, and it's a place where we can all find calm, natural experience. There's hundreds of trees on the island, some of them dating back hundreds of years, and you can really get a feel for the world that the nuns must have lived in. The ruins of St. Margaret's Monastery date back 800 years to around 1242 AD, in the time of her father, King Bela IV of Hungary, when he fought back the Mongol invasion. He promised that if he did succeed in saving Hungary and Croatia, which were a united kingdom at that time, that he would allow her to set up the first monastery on Margaret Island, as it's known today. But historically, before that, it was known as Rabbit Island, where rabbits were hunted by the noble elite. It has a much more peaceful atmosphere today. It contains an immaculate thermal baths and water park, but the real feature are the ruins here, where we can see the land as St. Margaret almost might have seen it herself. St. Margaret was promised by her father when she was still just an infant to this life of celibacy in a convent. But she actually rose to the occasion and chose to live as a poor and sick woman, often fasting from food and choosing to overcome her sins, self-professed, of vanity and pride by dressing quite shabbily, often neglecting grooming and hygiene practices, and many people who visited her in her time would describe her as, quote, repugnant to be around. But she was actually known as a great beauty, and this was her way of striking back at the expectations of society around her. St. Margaret Island rests in between the cities of Buda and Pest, which today we call collectively Budapest, and it's only about 3 kilometers long. It takes about 1 hour to walk the entire length of the island, and this monastery is featured in the widest part of the island, right in the middle. So around us, you might see features of Buda and Pest on either side at the ends of the island. The sections of the convent or monastery that we are walking through now are likely the places where St. Margaret and her first nuns would have lived, and it's also the remains of their kitchens and the store places for grains and goods throughout the winter. Some of these trees are around 600 or so years old after the death of St. Margaret, but while it was still functioning. Some of these trees were planted, and you can see the remains of some of the old pieces of the building, forever lost to us, but claimed by nature in the roots of the tree. At the center of the convent is the pulpit and the font. As a Catholic church, it would have had a very ornate altar area, and it's been reconstructed today and as near to its original condition as it could be. As a public place with free access 24 hours a day, unfortunately, it is not treated with the same reverence that we would like, but it still has a beautiful atmosphere to be here in these ruins, especially now in early spring. And the font is made of marble, imported from Italy. And a fun fact, if you're ever around marble and you want to know if it's real, it should feel cold to the touch. And this in fact does. So it is real marble, and it's originally a fountain. It is currently not operational, but it would have been, even in St. Margaret's time, a wellspring for water and to be used during church services. This is the very largest part of the convent, and the nuns and the people who might visit for services would stand here during Mass. And here you can see the grave of St. Margaret, at the time in the floor of the church. And even today, offerings are left for her to ask her protection and grant her well wishes. You can see on the ground in the floor of the church the graves of other people, currently unmarked, and they've not been exhumed. These graves likely contain the bones of other nuns, perhaps Mother Superiors, and maybe even the people who donated money to keep the convents going. Anybody buried closest to the altar would most likely be the most important figures. We can see the remains of a column-based structure, and we can also assume that there would have been windows, perhaps of stained glass, between each column and going up into an arched ceiling. 800 years does a lot to stonework, but even here we can still see the remains of delicate and ornate patterns along the ground and up along the walls. The convent, when it was first built in the 1200s, was decorated with beautiful painted walls. Here is a small semblance of what they might have looked like. The classic medieval window structure we think of with the arch and a pointed top and a narrow body to the window is reconstructed here alone on Margaret's convent grounds. But we can imagine this whole place surrounded by them. Narrow medieval windows served two purposes. One is to allow heat to stay inside the building. Winters get pretty harsh here in Hungary. But the other is to provide more protection for people who might be invading. An invader, a Mongol, as they feared at the time of this building, can't get through this window, but it also still allows in light. Thank you for coming with me on this tour of St. Margaret's Monastery here on Margaret Island along the Danube in Budapest, Hungary. I hope you enjoyed this tour. Please like and subscribe and find our other history videos as well as meditations and ambience that take you to spiritual places around the world.